Okay, so this is the next video in the X-Lite PRO series on how to upgrade the firmware and the internal RF module so that we can get D16 support, because the firmware that came on here originally was only access and did not support D16 or any ACST, for example the R9M Lite module, for example. So this firmware you can grab from the FrSky website, their download page, and there'll be a link to that download page down in the description. So this one, let's go to the computer. We have to grab some files, and then you also will need a micro SD card. It doesn't have to be that big. I think this one here is a 2 gigabyte. I'm going to be using that. I'm going to grab some files on the computer. I'll show you where to get those and what to do with them and how to put them on the card. And then we're going to come back and then put this into the radio and then do the upgrade on the radio itself. Okay, so you're going to want to go to the FrSky website and go to the download page for the X-Lite PRO. Link will be down in the description. You want to grab the firmware file that is dated on 2019 June the 5th, and here is what is described in the notes as what's fixed, and here's the main reason we're doing the firmware upgrade is to add D16 support, but it also does some other fixes here, and we have to also install the firmware for the internal module as well. I'll also show that you a little bit later in the video. So you want to grab this file, so hit download, and then once that's on your computer, then you want to go to this next section called SD card contents and grab this file here. This is from May the 6th, 2.3V0019. Go ahead and download that, and then once you've downloaded those two files, you should have both of these files on your computer somewhere. I just conveniently made a folder. I've already downloaded these. The firmware, this file here, FW X-Lite S PRO 190605, this is where the firmware files are. So we want to extract those first. So hit, I have this program called 7-zip, but you can use extract all. It's going to be part of Windows. And let's extract it into a folder inside this folder here. And we'll hit extract, and then it creates a folder inside there. And these are the files that you're going to need. I'll show you how to use those in a second. And we also want to extract the SD card contents. So go ahead and extract those. Okay, so now that we have all of these files here, we want to first grab all these files and then put them onto a micro SD card. It doesn't have to be a big card. I think 1 or 2 gigabytes should be big enough, but I think those are kind of hard to find these days. So if you have something bigger like an 8 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte, that'll be fine as well. So we'll go ahead and copy these files here, and then I have a SD card, a micro SD card already that's blank, and this happens to be a small one that is I had another radio. Go and paste the files in here. It's like a small 2 gigabyte card. So we want to put these files on here first, and then we're gonna, in the next step, we'll copy the firmware files over to this. Okay, so once all the files are copied over, you should have a folder file structure like this. We'll come back to this folder here in a second. Go back to the folder that you downloaded your files to, and then you already extracted this file here with the FW X-Lite S PRO. All your files should be in here. Go ahead and let's dig those files out. So the files we want are going to be this one here, this bin file, this firmware. That's the OpenTX version update. And then inside the folder here called RF is the RF module firmware update. So let's go ahead and let's go back up here. And the last file is in here. So this is the power management unit firmware update. So we want to grab all three of those. So let's go ahead and go into the firmware folder on the micro SD card here. And then we're going to put all the firmware files into this folder here. So grab the power management firmware. We'll go ahead and copy that over. Okay, so then now we want to copy over the RF module firmware. And then lastly, we want to copy over the OpenTX firmware file, this bin file here. And once you have all three of those in your firmware folder on the SD card, it should look like this. And at this point, we can go ahead and pop the micro SD card into the X-Lite PRO, and then we could do the rest of the firmware updates on the radio itself. Okay, so we're back from the computer. We've got the files on our micro SD card. We'll go ahead and we'll pop in the card now. And you do want to be careful that you put this in properly. If you have it slightly above the slot there, it might get stuck inside the radio. And you should not have to force it in. So once you get that in there, first thing we have to do is we have to update the OpenTX firmware on the radio, which is like the basically the software that's running on the radio, runs the radio itself. And then we'll update the internal RF module, and then the third thing we'll update is the power management firmware. So in order to update the OpenTX software, you have to go into bootloader mode on the radio. So you have to, it's kind of tricky, you have to hold down this little 4-pad directional pad here, and hold down the center button. So it's going to feel like you're hitting all the buttons at the same time, which is kind of what you want. And then you're just going to quickly press the power button to power it on, and it should go into bootloader mode. If it doesn't, then you're not holding you're not holding the center button down properly. So we should just go ahead and turn. Let's see, in that case it didn't turn on, so I'm not holding the pad down properly. So I'll try that again. It's kind of tricky. Sometimes you're not going to get it on the first try. There we go. And it should light up there, and you see that we'll have the OpenTX bootloader on. And what you want to do is you want to go to write firmware, so we're going to click that, and then this is the file Firmware X-Lite PRO. That's the file that we put into the firmware folder on the computer. So we'll go ahead and long press this, and then we're going to get this thing on here. It says hold enter to start, and you should see it should start writing. I'll say writing complete. I think we can hit the back button here, and then we can exit out of here, and then press the button, hit exit, and should power the radio off. Go ahead and let's power the radio back on.
Welcome to OpenTX.
You can see the voice files are now on here because we have the SD card contents. And then let's see what the version on the firmware of the radio is now. So go into the radio setup, and it should be over here on page 7 of 7, and we see now we are on the correct version, June the 5th of 2019, and then we see here that our module should be the old still the old version here, 1.11. I think the new version is 1.12, so go ahead and we'll update the module next. We'll go back out of here, and then we want to go to the radio setup. Let's back out of here. So we want to go to radio setup on page 2 of 7 here, and then go down to, this is the SD card content, so you go to firmware, so we'll click in there, and we want to go down to where it says ISRM Pro, highlight this, and then we're going to long press this, and then here we're going to be very careful and select the correct one. You want to select flash internal module, so go ahead and select that, and then it should start writing. This might take a few minutes. Okay, so we got a flash successful message. Go ahead and click OK. And then the last thing we want to update is the power management unit firmware. And just long press that and then click on flash power management unit. I don't think this will take quite as long. And it says flash successful. So that ought to be it for all of the updates. Let's go ahead and exit out of this, and then let's check the version number on the module. And we are on version 1.12 FCC. So there was a question on the X9 Lite video whether you can switch back and forth between FCC and EU, and you can do that if you are using the nightly updates or the firmware that's provided in OpenTX Companion. I'll have another video a little bit later on how to do the nightly updates via OpenTX Companion. There you can actually check that you don't want the EU version, and it'll then put the FCC version on there. There's another way you can do that with a Lua script, but I believe that's only currently available through FrSky directly. So if you actually have one of these, you could probably contact them, tell them you have the radio and you want to switch over from EU to FCC mode, and they could probably send you the file. I don't actually have that file, so sorry, I'm not going to be able to share that. So, but I think you can get that directly from FrSky. Okay, so the next thing, let's go ahead and exit out of here, and let's go into this model, and let's see what we can bind here. So it's going to still be in access mode. This is the internal RF module, and we should now be able to change this. So we have ACCST D16 mode. So those are the two that we have, and then if we want to let's set that to D16. If we want to bind up a D16 like an XM Plus receiver, we should be able to do that. And if you want to see proof of that actually working, go check out the X9 Lite video. It's basically the same firmware module update. So I showed that it does bind to an XM Plus receiver, and it was working. And I actually have flown that other radio, and so I'm not going to be showing you that in this video, so you can check out the other video if you want to see proof of that. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be doing another video on this radio where I'll do the nightly build update firmware on this. You still need to do the internal module update to get all the features, but if you say, for example, want to do crossfire on an external module, you will need to do install the nightly update, and I'll have a video on how to do that. Yeah, so stay tuned for that video. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.